Call to order has happened. Jim, may I have you go ahead and share the number for anyone who might be watching via YouTube?
Certainly. Anybody who would like to provide comments can dial 1-800-309-2350, and the conference number is 237-7193. And if you do choose to call in, you'll be able to press star 5, raise your hand, and let us know that you would like to make a comment or a question.
Thank you, Jim. Mr. Gullo, may you please read a case into the file?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Tonight we have case 2020-213, Caesar Family LLC. It is a request regarding lots 11A, 12A, 12B, Green Meadows. And this is a combination of requests for variances, refers to the lots, and a special exception to allow a semi-detached dwelling unit. The case file includes the application, which was filed, a list of contiguous property owners, an overview and map of the area that shows the property owners, a copy of the legal notice that was published in the Carroll County Times, copies of the letters that were sent to the contiguous property owners, return receipts that were received by the city from the letters to the contiguous property owners, a photograph of the hearing sign posted on the property showing tonight's hearing, and a copy of the receipt for the escrow account for this. As I said, tonight's case involves the issuance of variances and special exceptions. The standards are different for both of those, so I'll give you an overview. The standard from a variance basically is given by this board based on the testimony to show that special conditions or circumstances exist with the subject property and that require an alteration from the literal interpretation of the code, and that by granting the variance, you're not creating a hardship or giving a privilege to the property that's denied in other areas. So when you think of variances, you think of changing of numbers, 20 to 30, 35 to 40, something like that. A special exception, on the other hand, is also called a conditional use. Our code has a several list that Mr. Schaefer will go through to show any impact that is made by this special exception or conditional use. And the code talks about what those items are. The overall standard that you're going to use to judge this special exception comes from a case of Schultz v. Pritz, and I'm going to read you what the standard is from the court so you can hear it from yourselves. The appropriate standards being used in determining whether a requested special exception would have an adverse impact and therefore should be denied is whether there are facts and circumstances that show that the particular use proposed at that particular location would have any adverse effects above and beyond those inherently associated with that such special exception use, irrespective of its location, other areas in the zone. So those are the standards I need you to keep in mind. And if there's any questions after the testimony, we can revisit those. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gullo. Alrighty, for anyone who shares this evening, please know that you're testifying under oath and are bound by that testimony. And let's go ahead and have the opening statement.
Clark, you will have to unmute. We had to mute you because there was some feedback. And Clark, that would also be Control D is one way to do it. Uh-oh. We'll give him a minute.
Okay, now.
There you go. You got it, Clark.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Uh, my name's Clark Schaefer, 73 Main Street, Westminster. I represent Caesar Family LLC, the applicant here, and I do have a brief opening statement. Um, First, I would like to point out and ask that the plat, the various subdivision plats that describe these lots be referenced, and you as a board take judicial notice of them. And that is the first amended plan, section 1 Green Meadows, which is recorded at plat book 26, page 16. And then the amended plat for lots 10 and 11, section 1 Green Meadows, recorded at plat book 54, page 87. Wait a minute, and then I went out of order. The first plat was section 1 in first plat in chronological order. Is section 1 Green Meadows, plat book 18 and page 4. The reason I ask you to take judicial notice of those plats are those are the plats that describe the lots that we're asking for the special exceptions and the variances in this case. And they go back, of course, they're recorded in the land records, and they go back a way. But in fact, the originals go back to like 77, the original one. And they have on them a designation of a 25-foot minimum building lot. Now, my guess is that that's on there because that was the minimum building line, setback line, so to speak, front yard setback line, that Taneytown had in effect that applied to these lots in 1977 and 78. And I note for you that the Annotated Code of Maryland, section 5-201, provides that a planning commission may agree with an applicant on use, height, area, or bulk requirements, etc. And then it says, if the planning commission does in fact do that, the requirements or restrictions shall be stated on the plat before the plat is approved and recorded. And then it says, the requirements or restrictions shall have the same force of law, shall be enforceable in the same manner and with the same sanctions and penalties, and shall be subject to the same power of amendment or appeal as though part of the zoning law or map of the local jurisdiction. So I raise that issue, or not issue, I point that out to suggest to you that we may not even need the variances we're asking for legally. And the reason is that they were previously approved on a plat that was approved by the Planning Commission. And I think you'll discover during the testimony that this all makes sense in terms of what's on the ground in that neighborhood. Now, nevertheless, the other legal twist that we're dealing with here, legal twist is probably not an outfit, but anyway, is that when these lots were originally approved, semi-detached or duplexes were a permitted use in place, but in the R75 zone, in the R7500 zone, which is our zone. Subsequently, the town changed its, amended its zoning law to say that semi-detached were special exceptions. And obviously, we're subject to that law. You know, we did not obtain building permits and build buildings prior to that. So we're here today on a special exception request for a duplex and on variances for the lots, and we're prepared to proceed with our case if that's in order at this time. Okay? So I'll call as my first witness Ed Zepp. That's okay. Mr. Zepp, you raise your hand. Can you hear me?
If we could have, it was really hard to hear the entire opening statement. So if you all could enunciate or maybe even get up and come closer to the microphone, that would be wonderful.
Okay, why don't you move up here? No, you come over here. Here's the mic.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
I'm not a very good public speaker, so I'm just gonna read this, just a brief summary of who I am.
Ed, don't read it.
Okay.
Tell the board a little bit about yourself, Ed Zepp.
That's what this is.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, I got married in 1974. I moved to Uniontown. I lived there for 12 years, and then I bought my first house on Fairground Avenue in Taneytown. And I raised my 3 children there. And then I built a house for myself in 1998 in Stone Road. And I'm just a small builder. I started my own masonry company in 1974 and built 8 new houses in between that time frame. In 2008, when the housing market dropped, I got out of that for financial reasons. And I got into buying and flipping houses. Like 8 of them are in Taneytown area. I don't know if Jim, met Jim here and there over the years. I built a new house on 316 Honeyhorn Court and 3211 Pump Station Road.
Okay, and can you hear Ed okay? If he comes through, okay, good. So Ed, are you the contract purchaser for these 2 lots that we're talking about here today?
Yes, my contract is contingent on getting these variances and being allowed to build the duplex and a single family.
Okay. So on lot 11A, you want a variance from 60-foot setback to 35 feet for a variance of 25 feet, right?
Correct.
Now, what do you want to build on 11A?
I want to build a 1,600 square foot rancher. The ranchers are in high demand. The older people are looking for ranchers, and that's with a 2-car garage. And that's, I'm maybe 40 foot wide by 50 foot.
I'm having awful trouble hearing you.
Where's the microphone on this thing?
Right here, thanks.
I want to build a rancher on lot 11. You hear that?
Try a 1, 2, 3, Ed.
1, 2, 3.
I can hear.
Can you hear? All right, so Ed, you want to build a rancher on lot 11A, right?
Yes,
It's going to be a single family house, correct?
correct. It's a 2-car garage.
With a 2-car garage.
Facing the front.
And Ed, the neighborhood that you're building in, are you familiar with it?
Yes. I lived right around the corner for 12 years.
And are there other houses in that neighborhood?
Yes.
And do those houses have a frontage that's approximately 35 feet or 25 feet?
Well, they're less than that. The one that's 32.5 or whatever, the 32 foot 6 inches or whatever, and then the house on the corner is 28 foot off the curb.
So if you get this variance and special exception, will the house you build on 11A be set back approximately the same distance from the street as the other houses on the street?
Well, at 35 feet, I'm gonna be like a foot and a half back, or 2.5 feet
So
back.
very close.
Yeah, it's close.
Okay. And will that variance allow you to build a better, nicer house on that lot?
Well, I can't get a 1,600 square foot house on there unless I go 2-story. And marketable wise, I'd rather go with the 1,600 square foot rancher on that particular lot.
And you believe that will be a compatible, harmonious house for that area?
Yeah, I mean, there's an all brick rancher right beside it on the left hand side. And the duplex is going to be somewhat compatible with what's in the area.
Now, okay, now we're jumping to duplex, which is fine.
Okay.
Now, on lots 12A and 12B, you want to build a duplex, correct?
Correct.
And you want a variance from 40 feet to 35 feet.
Yeah.
To allow that, is that correct?
Yeah, I want more backyard because the front yard is going to be driveway and parking pad and with a little, spot of grass. So,
Right.
ideally, I'd like more land in the back.
And would that setback also line up substantially with the other houses on the
Yeah,
block?
like I said, I'll be 2.5 foot back further than they are,
But you'll be,
I can live with that.
well, you can live with it, and everybody else can live with it, hopefully.
Yeah.
Now, will the duplexes, what will the square footages of the duplexes be?
Well, I'm thinking somewhere between 1,400 and 1,500 square feet of piece with maybe a 1 or 2 car garage. I haven't got with the architect yet until this was all finalized, so I can't really get you a final drawing until these lots are finalized. And I didn't want to spend a couple $1,000s on blueprints when I wasn't sure I was going to build there.
Will the houses you build be, in your opinion, similar or better than what's in the neighborhood now?
Well, the houses I build are going to bring the house values of everything else on that street up.
You say that confidently, right?
Yeah, I know.
And how do you? Why are you
Because
confident?
I'm probably going to, for the single family house, I'm probably going to get 280,000, and with the current house in there, I think for sale for 140,000 right now. But that's, I'd say that's a lot older house. But,
Talk to them.
yeah.
But now, Ed, if you had to meet these setbacks, well, the first one, the 60-foot setback,
That's impossible.
well, that would basically destroy the value of that lot, right?
Yeah, that's not a building lot at that point. At
Now,
that point, it's just not.
On the 12A and 12B, that's from 40 feet to 35 feet. That just allows you to build a little nicer, larger square foot house.
Well, my problem with that was, if I build a house, I'd like to have room to put a deck on the back at some point. That adds another 12 or 16 feet to the back. So if I build that back 40 feet, then, I'm going to be limited to what I can do in the back.
Well, and the front of the house is going to be larger.
Pardon me?
Sorry, go ahead.
The front of the house will be largely taken up with a driveway and a little front
Well,
lawn, right?
you need 2 parking pads, so 2 cars parked side by side on a 45-foot wide lot doesn't give you a lot of grass left.
So you're aware of the Taneytown requirements as the parking pads and that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And you sort of scoped out these lots to know that you could build a decent unit meeting those requirements if these variances are granted, right?
Yeah, well, I inquired with Jim a couple times about these lots, and he pretty much told me what procedures we had to go through to get them approved. So I was aware that something had to be done before you could build on it.
Now, the area you're building in is pretty much developed, is it not?
Yeah, I think there were only 3 lots left on that street.
So they're an infill type development, correct?
Yeah.
In your opinion, are they compatible? Do they fit in with the
Yeah, they're
area?
about the same size as all the other lots. I mean, the 11A might be attached more than the corner lot, but, you know, that's just the way it is.
That's all I have for Mr. Jeff. If anybody has any questions, he's open to the floor.
Any questions?
Anybody have any questions? Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Call Marshall Green. Marshall, state your name and address for the record, please.
Marshall Green, 439 East Main Street, CLSI.
Now, Marshall, what's your background and experience in the design development industry?
I have worked with CLSI for 35 years, and we have engineered and developed subdivisions in Carroll County and in Taneytown.
And have you worked in that field for how long?
35 years.
35 years. And in that capacity, have you testified as an expert in front of various boards and agencies?
Yes, I have.
I'd like to ask that he be qualified as an expert in the area of land design.
Okay.
Marshall, you've worked with the Feeser family and with Mr. Jeff on this project for several months now, have you not?
Yes, I have.
Okay. And in your opinion, do these variances match or are compatible with the development in the area?
Yes, our clients wanted to be certain that their request fit the neighborhood. So they hired us to go out and to actually take measurements of the adjoining houses to make sure that their proposal would fit in conformance of the houses along the street. So we did that survey and in which we found that the setbacks that are on the exhibit are true field measurements.
And is it your opinion that if these variances are granted and the special exception, that these housing units can meet the town requirements as to adequate facilities, yards, parking, etc.?
Yes. As with the variances, they can meet all the requirements.
And in fact, that's one of your specific areas you looked into, correct?
Absolutely.
Do you believe that the duplex units would have adverse effects above and beyond those adverse effects inherently associated with such a use, regardless of its location in the R7500 zone?
The duplexes are harmonious in that neighborhood, in the R75 zone also. It was the concept of the original design that the duplexes would fit in there, and as approved, they would fit well in the neighborhood.
Now, this neighborhood and these lots front on a public street,
Right.
correct?
All utilities are already present, water, sewer, as you use the term infill, it's ready to go.
And they're relatively level lots.
Absolutely.
There's no unusual topographic features about them, etc.
Double ready.
Now, if the variances were not granted, would in your opinion, would the lots be able to be used for a development that's compatible with the neighborhood?
Lot 11A would be greatly challenged with a 60-foot setback. The other two lots, you couldn't just build a individual single family on that lot and blend in with the entire neighborhood.
It would be not harmonious.
That's correct.
And it would not allow a reasonable backyard.
Not at all.
Correct?
Not at all.
That's all I have from Mr. Green. They know that.
Anybody have any questions? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you. That concludes our testimony.
I think
Unless
Carl
you
had-
have questions.
Yeah, okay. Jim, are there any other duplexes back there in that area? Are there? Because I went through there today. I've been through there a lot. I've never seen other. Fellas,
There are a number of semi-detached homes along
they're what?
There are predominantly semi-detached, or oftentimes they're called duplex. Our code refers to them as semi-detached or side by side. That's what the majority of that neighborhood is.
Okay, because I thought they were all.
There are two at the very end of the street at the elementary school end. Actually, that's there's one right on the corner, the two corner, and then one that fronts Courier is a single family. Everything else is a semi-detached.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Yvonne, I don't know if you can hear me or not, but most of the units along the same side of the street where we're applying for are duplex right now.
And if I could just give everybody a quick reminder, please mute when you're not talking, or the audio is not really great on this one.
So are there additional witnesses, or have you wrapped things
No,
up?
No, that concludes our case.
All righty, Jim, may you please share as the zoning administrator here.
And just one last time before I do that, in the event somebody is watching on YouTube and would like to make any comment or has questions, the number to dial in is 1-800-309-2350, conference number 237-7193. So now that I gave that plug, on to the zoning report. The Planning Commission did review this application at their June 3rd, 2020 meeting. And again, they did move to provide unanimously moved to or approved a favorable recommendation for the Board of Appeals for the semi-detached dwellings and the variance. And that was unanimous. As to the variance, I think that pursuing them is, as Mr. Schaefer indicated, kind of an overabundance of caution. There are some exceptions in the code that allow the zoning administrator to reduce the front yard setback when we have an infill situation like this, so that the idea is the code wants you to kind of split the difference if you have a developed lot on either side of an undeveloped lot. The idea being to place the new dwelling or the new building so that it's compatible with the dwellings on either side. So the code does give us that latitude, but by pursuing the variance, it's not a subjective ruling on the part of the zoning administrator. So that sort of locks in the ability to do that. And I do know that in the past we've had situations where that flexibility was not employed on certain lots. So we do have a couple lots where the zoning administrator at the time looked at the chart, said, oh, this needs a 60-foot front yard. And then we've got a house that sits 60 feet farther back or from the road when the neighboring houses are only 10 feet or 20 feet. So the code does allow some flexibility, but getting the variances sort of assures that it takes the question out of it. So that said, we've had interest in these lots off and on over the years. We've pursued a yard variance for another, I guess, contract purchaser that did not go through. But generally, when we sent mailings around to the contiguous property owners. There were no objections to reducing the setbacks previously, so it does seem as though there's no resistance from any of the neighbors for any of what's being proposed. And again, we don't have any callers on the line, so no one's called in to offer any other testimony at this point. So with that, I think Mr. Schaefer's opening statement really summed things up very well. I'd be happy to answer any questions if the board members have any.
All right, so since we have no public to make public comment, there will be no rebuttal. So Mr. Schaefer, I agree with Jim that I feel like we have a lot of information. Are you comfortable with us closing the public portion and then deliberating, or did you have something that you wanted to close with?
No, I'm comfortable with closing the public hearing and proceeding to the decision part.
All righty, well, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I as a board member do not have any issue with any of what was put forth this evening. So I will defer to others to hear your thoughts. Nothing from Ms. Autry. Mr. Ebal?
Nothing from me. It's cool.
Ms. Kelso, are you content, or would you like to share some thoughts? I'm
Edie,
sorry.
Control D, Edie, so you can be heard. There you go.
It was very well explained. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
And, okay. And I have no problem with that at all.
All right, I seek advice, and maybe this would be for either Jim or Jay. With this case, should we treat 11A as separate from 12A and B and pass them as two separates, or just lump it all together because it's in one case presentation?
I'm comfortable if you make a motion to adopt the entire request that they have, which would be the variances that are requested and the conditional use that's requested in one motion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion to permit as what we've seen this eve?
Yes, I'll make that motion.
Good.
Thank you, Ms. Kelso. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Ebal has seconded the variance and special exception. All those in favor, please put your thumb up. Show agreement. And all those opposed, finger down for a no. Ms. Kelso, were you a yes? Wonderful. So we have 4 yeses, 0 no's. So the motion carries. And I will now pass the baton to Bello to wrap things up.
Okay, Mr. Schaefer, you could email me the citations for the plats that you read. Do you have that?
Jim Weifrick,
Yes.
do these expire after a year, these approvals? Because Mr. Zepp's explaining that it could be, given COVID, it could be 18 months. You know?
To the best of my knowledge, the board's decision does not expire.
Okay. We'll look into that, but thank you very much. Yeah, thanks.
Did Clark, did you get what I need you to email me?
No, just tell me again, please.
Can you email me the citations for the plats that you read in the beginning of the meeting?
Yes, be happy to.
Okay, and I'll prepare the opinion after I get it.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Hope you have a good evening and be safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna